Hola mi gente, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Alba Mal, me pueden decir Alba. El canal se llama Seriela, estamos aquí para hablar de libros, algunos de ellos en español desde Puerto Rico. Hello, my name is Alba, or you may call me Alba. Channel name is Seriela. We're here to talk about books and some of them in Spanish from Puerto Rico. Let's continue with memoirs. But before I continue with memoirs, I want to talk about something, a memoir that was well done, in my opinion. And those are the ones by Esmeralda Santiago. Esmeralda Santiago was born in Puerto Rico, but wrote her trilogy, her memoirs, in English, as did Andres Torres in Signing in Puerto Rican, as did Piri Thomas in Down These Mean Streets. What did Esmeralda Santiago do when her book was translated? She went and found somebody, even though she's fully bilingual, she went and found somebody who would do the translation for her, a wonderful translator by the name of Nina Torres-Vidal. Okay. Back to the book that I'm talking about, which is Dalmau. Raymond Dalmau from Harlem, Puerto Rico. It says here it's written by Raymond Dalmau and Hiram Sanchez Martinez, with a prologue by Benicio del Toro. This is so complicated, people. This is so complicated. And one of the reasons I'll put up here, why this graph, because of the huge, almost double the amount of Puerto Ricans that now, or people of Puerto Rican extraction, that live out of Puerto Rico. Between the United States, Europe, the rest of the Caribbean, South America, we're all over the world. As Maya of the new channel from Hawaii can attest. And there is a cultural difference. There is a distinction, a clear distinction between diasporic Puerto Ricans and those who live on the island. And I attest to that personally. That's been my experience. When I came here, when I was 18 years old, speaking fluent English and not being able to speak fluent Spanish, I was frequently reminded of the fact that I was not Puerto Rican. That was way back, before I've lived the rest of my life here. Even so, my adult children will frequently correct my errors that I still commit, right? Language is very important, very important. And since I studied at the university level, I read a lot of books in Spanish at that, academic type of language. When I would speak to people later on in my life, in the streets here in Puerto Rico, in shops, at parties, social gatherings, frequently people would say, "You don't talk like a Puerto Rican. Tú no hablas como puertorriqueña. Tú no eres de aquí. You're not from here, are you?" Because I was speaking book Spanish orally, right? Okay, so these are, and that's just language. That's just language. I'm not even talking about the different factors that include, being raised in the country versus being raised in a city, being raised here in Puerto Rico versus being raised in the United States, all of that. So, what happens with this book? This is another book in which I would have loved to know the story behind the writing of this book. I know from the prologue that Benicio del Toro, the actor, the one who played Che on the screen, on the big screen, is a friend of Raymond Dalmau and a fan, a basketball fan of his, and was after him to write his memoirs. You have to write your memoirs, you have to write your memoirs. Fine. And he started, and I'm speculating here because I don't know. I haven't talked to any of them, of course. But I'm figuring Benicio del Toro, and you can look it up on Wikipedia. Benicio del Toro comes from a long line of family members who were lawyers, right? So he has that background. And it just so happens that Hiram Sanchez Martinez is a retired judge, right? First a lawyer and then has been a judge in Puerto Rico, and he recently retired. When he retired, Hiram Sanchez wrote a book about Antonia, who was one of the martyrs of the student movement in the 70s, when he was a young student also at the University of Puerto Rico and was a personal friend of hers. So this book is not only a book about Antonia Martinez, his college classmate, but also like a memoir of his, how he came to the university, his background, how he came to know her, and his impressions of the student movement at that time. Right. After he started off, he himself says it, as an innocent young man from the country, a small country town in the southwestern part of Puerto Rico, close by here, where I go to church, and Yauco, Puerto Rico. Naive person, very provincial. Okay, he himself says so. Plus white. I know it because I've seen him at the book signing. And so he became a judge. Fine. Then we have Raymond Dalmau, and I admire and respect the fact that Raymond Dalmau wanted this book in Spanish. That's why the title is the subtitle, From Harlem a Puerto Rico. Half in English, half in Spanish. From Harlem a Puerto Rico. To reflect the change in his life. Yeah, and which is one of the reasons why I do want to finish this book. I've just suspended it for a while. I want to finish the book because that's the same thing that happened to me around the same time in history. And he came from New York, having been raised in New York, and I was raised in Chicago. So I wanted to, compare and contrast the situation. But it's hard for me because Hiram Sanchez is the one writing this in Spanish. And Hiram Sanchez Martinez writes with his very lawyerly judge Spanish. Yeah. And there are just some things that don't translate well. That's my opinion. Diasporic voices are very different and distinct. Not that the universal, we're not talking about universal feelings that everybody shares. No, we're talking about diasporic experiences are distinct. And that's why sometimes there's a clash between, and he mentions it, the discrimination that some of us felt when we came down to the island, and everybody thought that we had done drugs or that the young women who came down were all promiscuous. And yeah. So there are distinct differences between the diasporic culture and the culture of people here in Puerto Rico. And we love each other anyway. There are also, just as there are distinctions between classes, we're a very, very unequal society here on the island. And yeah, there's a wide variety of cultures right here. The 3 million people who live here on the island. So to a certain extent, this is not own voices to me. That's my opinion. And if you are one of my Puerto Rican readers, wherever you are, I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. To me, the authentic voice is relevant here. I want to continue reading it, as I said before, but that voice coming out, I have to understand, is Hiram Sanchez translating Raymond Dalmau's experience into a very elite Puerto Rican Spanish. That's what I'm saying. Now, before I leave, I wanted to talk a little bit, the thing about voice. I had already mentioned this before. The autobiography of Malcolm X is told to Alex Haley, to me, suffered from that. Alex Haley's voice, his novelist voice, comes out especially in the dramatic, overly dramatic, and overly described parts of this autobiography. And sometimes I have to wonder whether a biography, how much of it is historical depiction, right, and historical context, and how much of it is voyeurism. There is such a thing as TMI, too much information, irrelevant to the message about the person's life that's being made. So, I think that's all I have to say about this book, this memoir. I will read it. I will read it because I respect Raymond Dalmau, as a lot of people do. The signing for this book, and if I find the picture, I'll put it up here. The signing, there was standing room only at the bookstore. There were so many people there, and so many fans. He's a very beloved person. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it, despite it's not being his voice, in my opinion. So I'll leave it at that, people. Take care. Have a great day. Keep on reading. Oh, and I want to thank all the new subscribers. Welcome you here. And a mi gente que hablan español, cuídense mucho, sigan leyendo. Adiós.